Hello, everyone. Patrick Gardner from the Education and Events Committee here. We're going to start our program, our summer kickoff program any minute here. We're just going to wait for a few seconds to get our critical mass on, and we'll kick off our program. Stay tuned. All right, looks like we have a good quorum, so we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning into our presentation today. My name is Patrick Gardner with Guarantee Mortgage, and I am your 2021 SFAR Chair for the Education and Events Committee. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to welcome you to our summer kickoff event. Before we get started, I'd like to briefly discuss our webinar practices. All Zoom audience viewers are on mute throughout the presentation. Please try to refrain from using the chat feature to carry on side conversations, as it can distract from the presenters. If you have questions during the presentation, they can be asked at any time by typing into the Q&A portal. We will try to get to all of the questions posted through the Q&A at the end of each mini session that we're presenting today. As a reminder, our presentation will be recorded and may be viewed on the SFAR social YouTube channel with a variety of other Zoom webinars we have done over the past few years. There's quite a collection of videos and topics in the library, so please use it as a dynamic resource. I wanted to also take a moment to quickly promote another important virtual program taking place on Monday. Starting at 9:30 a.m., we will have the Deputy Chief of Police sharing his insights on crime in the city, how realtors can be prepared, report, and make the city safer. Agent Kelly Kwan will also be joining us and sharing her journey and experience of overcoming a serious criminal incident as a realtor. Please tune into that program, as it will be very insightful. As you know, the Education and Events Committee has been committed to providing quality virtual programming throughout the pandemic. And as we transition back to our new normal, hopefully starting next Tuesday, we can also start to look to in-person events. So stay tuned for those announcements as we enter late summer and into the fall. We have a very informative and fun program for you today that we are calling our Red Hot Summer Kickoff event. Our Master of Ceremonies today is SFAR's own Matt Fuller. As most of you know, Matt is a past president of SFAR and an experienced veteran SF real estate professional. Matt runs Jackson Fuller Real Estate with his partner, Britton Jackson, and is our MC with the most today. Matt, please take it away.
All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I am so excited that this is going to be one of the last times we gather on Zoom. I am looking forward to seeing you all in person. And I didn't remember that this was going to be recorded, so I'm not really thinking about this as a webinar. I am thinking about this as my YouTube personality interview audition. It's like YouTube star, here I come, right? We're going to be big. And we have a ton of amazing supporting guest stars today. So I want to jump right in because we're all super excited about June 15th. And we have tons of questions about what that means, about best practices, how to do business after a pandemic. So this morning, our first speaker is the Director of Public and Government Affairs at the San Francisco Department of Public Health. She's also a very familiar face. She is a former supervisor on the west side of San Francisco. She has been involved in city politics for over 14 years in a variety of roles at this point. She's always been a great advocate for realtors and for the creation of housing throughout San Francisco. So please help me give a huge virtual Zoom welcome to Katie Tang. Hi,
Hello,
Katie.
everyone. Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you all for having me here. I'm going to just bring up the slides here. So just full disclosure, I am not a doctor, as you all know, but I will be sharing information that our health officer, Dr. Susan Phillip, actually presented in a webinar very recently, just this week. All right, let's see if, all right, does that show up okay for everyone? Okay, all right, let me know if you can't see anything. All right, so just a quick overview of where we are with the pandemic. We are at actually a really great point where COVID-19 cases in San Francisco have been at the lowest ever since the pandemic. You'll see that we had over 500 deaths, unfortunately, in San Francisco. But in terms of where we are now with new daily cases, looking at 12 and also hospitalizations at 11, I'm sorry, that really we're at an all-time low. We've plateaued, hospitalizations and cases peaked at one point, and now we're on a downward trajectory, which is really, really positive, and showing that even as our economy is reopening, the vaccinations really are helping us be able to sustain all the reopenings. If you look at a comparison between different comparable counties, you'll see that San Francisco, again, doing really well in comparison in terms of death rates as well as cases per thousand population. So far today, 79% of eligible San Franciscans, meaning those aged 12 and above, have received at least one dose of the vaccine. And that is incredible progress since we rolled out vaccines in January. If you were to compare San Francisco to other countries, in fact, percentage-wise in terms of our vaccination rates, we are doing really, really well. Actually, this says first dose is 71%, but we're actually at about, again, 79%. You'll see, again, other countries in comparison here, Malta, Bhutan, Canada, and so forth. So again, just looking at our county globally, percentage-wise, doing really well. And so one of the things that we are excited about in this point in time is that there is very little risk to fully resuming daily in-person activities. I know, Matt, you're excited about in-person meetings if you are fully vaccinated, and also the risk is decreased for everyone else as well. And so you'll see here the imagery of what we're all looking forward to this summer and beyond. In terms of real estate industry specific guidance, so this is all subject to change. So as you know, there are many, the timing of this webinar or this event is, couldn't be better because there actually will be more news coming down the line from the state. But currently, in-person showings of properties are permitted, but they must follow indoor gathering capacity limits per the California Department of Public Health. We in San Francisco have fully aligned with this guidance, and under the yellow tier, indoor gatherings are restricted to a maximum of 50% capacity if there are capacity limits, or 50 people, whichever is fewer. People who are sick or have COVID-19 symptoms are not permitted to attend. And then, of course, the three most important things: physical distancing, hand sanitizer, face coverings. Those should either all be required or made available. And so I have a link here for more information about that particular guidance, but this is current. And again, all subject to change very soon, because California has announced that they will lift most COVID-19 restrictions on June 15th, which is, I know, very exciting for all of us. So in San Francisco, we will also be largely lifting those restrictions as well. So the state, we have heard, will plan to lift all capacity limits and rescind all sector-specific directives and guidance, with exception possibly for indoor mega events. So meaning those with over 5,000 people, and outdoor mega events over 10,000 people. We are planning to align, and our health officer and city attorney's office are working on a revision to the health order as we speak, so that it'll be ready by the 15th. We do plan to fully align with the state and CDC guidance in most public and business settings. There are some limited exceptions related to indoor and outdoor mega events, as well as shelters, skilled nursing facilities, and other high-risk settings. We will, through the revised health order, again effective June 15th, allow fully vaccinated people to not wear a mask, except where required by federal, state, and local rules, including local business and workplace guidance. So I do want to remind folks that CDPH, Cal OSHA, CDC, they will be issuing updated guidance that businesses should refer to. And so they may require unvaccinated people to wear masks and people to wear masks in the workplace. And of course, the federal government is requiring masks on public transportation through September. So again, just want to remind people to review those guidance once it's finalized. And so while COVID is not over, we do not anticipate having any significant additional guidance in San Francisco for directives or business operations. So I know it's both a positive thing, as well as for some people, I think it was nice to have some of the guidance in place, but for the most part, these will largely be going away. Oops. And so again, this is just a reminder to continue to review any requirements under CDC, CDPH, Cal OSHA, or any other guidance specific to industries in terms of coming from regulatory agencies. One thing I'll note is that we are still keeping an eye on variants in our community. That is still something that we do need to look out for. What we have learned, and there's been a new naming convention for the variants. So the Delta variant, which we previously knew as the Indian variant, is still very strong in our communities, have made its way through the Bay Area. But what we have also seen is that you know, if you've had, for example, 2 doses of Pfizer, you know, we have seen that it holds up very strong against the Delta variant. But again, it's something that we still are very cautious about because it is 40 to 70% more infectious than, for example, other variants that we're seeing, like the Alpha strain. And so all the more reason why the vaccinations are so important in our community, not only just in San Francisco, but really throughout the state, throughout the country, and throughout the world. So just wanted to leave you with a couple other links and resources. Again, there's actually quite a bit that will be changing and are in development right now. So there will be a revised health order from San Francisco, our health officer, effective June 15th. So stay tuned for all of that. With that said, as I mentioned, protecting our public health is also helping to support our economic recovery. I wanted to share that we still, for at least through the end of this month, will be operating a high volume vaccination site at Moscone South. Some of our city operated, city run high volume vaccination sites will be closing down soon. I think one today and another Moscone again at the end of the month. No appointments are needed. So if you know of anyone who needs an appointment, please tell them to drop in 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Open until, sorry, actually, I guess it's July 14th, with the exception of the July 4th holiday. So again, we're trying to make it really easy for people to access vaccines without appointments these days. So please tell friends and family and anyone who needs it. All right, so that's it for the presentation, and happy to answer any questions that you have. Or at least I'll get back to you if I don't know the answer.
So, Katie, I just want to kind of clarify, like we've got, as realtors, if we're doing an open house this weekend, we've got one more weekend under the old rules. And then come this Tuesday and beyond, it's the new rules. And practically speaking, from an open house standpoint, since we don't necessarily have a capacity, posted capacity number at the door, the big difference would really be just around masks. But as we understand it, if anyone is not vaccinated inside, everyone's supposed to wear a mask. So basically, probably not too big a change in terms of if I'm running an open house. I'm still gonna expect people to be masked. I should still be wearing a mask, right?
That's right. You probably won't see too much of a difference, but I haven't seen what is officially coming down from the state or what exactly they're going to roll back. So I would say stay tuned for that. But I think what you summarized is correct.
Awesome. We've got a couple minutes to ask Katie the toughest questions that we can think of, because it's Friday morning and I know that's what she loves to do. If you've got a question, toss it in the chat window. or let me know. So far, it seems like everyone was exactly down with what you said. No questions so far. Anything else you want to mention that's going on from the Department of Public Health or that realtors should be aware of that you've got our attention real quick?
I'll just say, we're at the last phase where we're trying to reach, populations that may be more hesitant or less confident about vaccinations, and it's the most challenging phase that we're in. So if you know of any friends, families, coworkers who need a little bit more support or resources or information to feel comfortable, please do reach out if you need additional resources on that front. But we need everyone's help in this last stretch.
One of the things I think we've heard about is actually folks going door to door to offer vaccinations. And if I was a realtor and had some time on my hands, is there a place I can volunteer to help with projects like that? Or is that best left to the professionals?
We do have clinicians roving around through some of our priority neighborhoods to offer vaccines, whether door to door or just roving around in the community based on where we're seeing the need. So that is happening. Thank you for volunteering. We will leave it to our professionals to do that piece, but if you want to talk to people, we certainly encourage you to do that.
That is excellent. All right, so we don't have any questions for Katie. So you so far have won the prize for the most concise and right on point speaker, because we all understand, go get vaccinated, hold an open house, wear a mask, have hand sanitizer available. Am I missing anything?
Nope, you've got it.
All right. Katie Tang, Director of Public and Government Affairs with the San Francisco Department of Public Health and a longtime housing advocate and friend. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday morning.
Thank you all for having me. Thanks for your time.
All right, and joining us next is the President and CEO of the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. And I don't really know that he needs much more introduction than that. However, I will say Rodney Fong is a fourth generation San Francisco. So I wonder if his family has been complaining about the price of San Francisco real estate, like going on for 4 generations now. Extensive economic and civic background. He was actually on the San Francisco Planning Commission for 8 years. That in itself is probably something you could write a book on. You've also been very involved serving as the co-chair of our COVID-19 Economic Recovery Task Force. So here to talk about what's going on from a Chamber of Commerce point of view, we have Rodney Fong.
Thank you, Matt. And you can't give me a shot, but you can certainly pour me a shot if you'd like. And hopefully we're able to do that very soon.
Philip Franck, right? I read about it in the paper this morning.
What was that again? What from?
The liquor that like San Francisco consumes more of than any place else. I think it's like the Lillet. Yeah. Lillet Fernet. Yeah. There you go.
Popular amongst the restaurant industry. Yeah. Hello, everybody. You can tell where Matt and my mind is, but great to see everybody here. I just want to share with you some information, hopefully red hot information from the Chamber of Commerce and helping our city build back up. I'm sure everyone is feeling a little bit of energy, a little bit of optimism, and I think we absolutely will get there. Do we have an opportunity to make San Francisco a little better than it was before? I certainly think so. Just to dispel a little bit of misinformation, the Chamber of Commerce is made up of 80% small businesses. Yes, we have big downtown businesses, but we represent small businesses. The board of directors in the midst of COVID really made a commitment to themselves and said, hey, the Chamber of Commerce needs to focus on small business retention, those that survive the pandemic, to get them back up and going, and to create a pathway for new businesses, new entrepreneurs to get into business, to lower the barriers of entry for them. As part of that, I want to just share on the slide here how the Chamber's really been supported. We need your help to support the mayor's efforts for economic recovery in the downtown area. As you can see listed here, the mayor's really supported a lot of these items here. Everything here in San Francisco is controversial, so she could use our voice from the business community, large or small. Also, she is proposing a Small Business Recovery Act. This is sort of phase 2 of what we all voted on and passed, Proposition H, which streamlines the permit processing process here in San Francisco. Conditional use, trying to get it approved administratively, not waiting 3 days, 30 days, 3 months to get something through the city. Doing a rooftop deck should be simple and easy. And so we're supporting her in that effort. The Chamber of Commerce has been focused on data. And over the last 9 months, we've really committed ourselves to create data and share it and use it for the city's best interest. As you see here, we launched the first portion of it, which was based on graffiti, trash cans, human waste calls, vandalism, sidewalk cleaning, homelessness tents, broken storefronts, theft. The first part of it was actually all on recovery. How many businesses were shuttered? What the job rate was in hiring by sector by sector. If you go on to sfchamber.com and click on data, you'll see just more gobs of information. This is all open source and we just collaborated together. It's open information. Feel free to use it and source the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce as you guys are talking to your clients. The most important piece out of all this, and even our work, my work with the Economic Recovery Task Force, is the city will never fully recover unless the streets of San Francisco recover. And I know you guys on an hourly, daily basis are dealing with that, hearing from people asking about the streets and the safety if they were to move to a particular area. This is paramount that we focus on the streets of San Francisco. All of our work to do permanent shared spaces programs, parklets, all the success of that is predicated on the cleanliness of San Francisco. So let me go into a couple of pieces here. And this will be launched at our City Beat Breakfast, which is June 24th this year. But vandalism, as you can see, these are the number of complaints. While in 2020, followed by the same trend as 2021, it's a lower rate. We think that fewer people were sort of out there. There was an anomaly of the busyness, of course, on the San Francisco streets. But we wanted to capture this data, so we really had a starting point. The purpose of all this data is to, at some point, go back to our electeds, to go back to the business community and show where maybe certain sectors are not coming back as fast. Maybe other sectors are actually doing incredibly well, and we want to counterbalance that to make sure all of San Francisco is thriving. The second slide is about streets and sidewalk cleaning and number of complaints. And you can obviously see the real ups and downs. Part of this is maybe talking about seasonality, time of year, when tourism is in town, when it's not in town. But at the moment we are on a downward slope, which is great. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at the city by area. And so this is an interesting heat map, of the number of complaints in a particular area. Being very careful not to call out a supervisory district, but looking at the area and the concentration where this work is happening. This is important. And I think it's also important to know that the mayor and the city is doing a great job in certain areas like Golden Gate Park, where you see that's a pretty safe green area. Economic outlook overall. This is some positive news. And this data comes from one of our partners who is focused in the medium-sized businesses in San Francisco. I think for all of us here, a lot of the big businesses, for the most part, have stayed. Some have left. Some of the small businesses are having a difficult time, but getting back on their feet. The middle-sized businesses, these are big companies that maybe none of us have really even heard of. They want to be stealthy, but there are 1,000 employees. They exist in San Francisco, and we really think at the Chamber of Commerce, this is an important segment for us to focus on. This is probably the next Airbnb, the next Oracle, the next larger company. And so if we can help them grow, all the more important. This is talking about 2021, the national growth rate being 7.5, anticipating in 2022 to 4.8. In San Francisco, we beat some of that though, and the national growth rate is 8.1%, and in 2022, 4.3%. So signs are looking positive here in San Francisco. We have a long way to go. We all know this. It's not going to happen overnight, and very much like
I'm so sorry.
The pandemic and how we were shutting down in phases and steps, we probably will open back up in phases and steps. A lot of the offices that we are hearing from, some larger employers and smaller employers, are opening up the office now. I'm repeating what you all know, opening it up for individuals to come in right now. going through the summer season because school's out and summer camps aren't fully in full swing. But come Labor Day probably is the real push when we'll start to see people back in the office at least 3 days a week, if not 5. And I think we're all itching to some degree to get back out there into the streets and enjoy a sandwich, enjoy a cocktail with my buddy here, Matt, and enjoy the flavor, the sounds, the smells of San Francisco once again, and hopefully in cleaner conditions than when we last were there. I will stop.
So,
Matt, any just thoughts, dialogue, question?
yeah, as we wait for questions to come in, I'll start off with a question. I know as I'm getting out and about in San Francisco again, it's still really pressing to see the number of shop fronts that are boarded up. What have you been hearing from your members about when people plan to, take all the boards off and look like we're a city open for business?
That's a little bit of the scary part, Matt. I think we don't know how many of those businesses that are shuttered are going to open back up. We had indications that over 50% of the small businesses were shuttered, whether that meant permanently or temporarily, unclear. I know that we're all eager to get those back in and open. Retail is a challenge. We all know. There are discussions amongst the chamber about trying to incentivize the ground floor retail and allowing office space, nonprofit office space, schools to potentially go in, and not necessarily retail as we used to know it, but of course allowing that. But more activation, I think, overall is really needed. So some of that is zoning changes. Some of that is allowing office space or nonprofit office space to go into ground floor retail. So I think we're a little bit of wait and see and find out. It's a little premature to make that big move. But at the chamber, we're talking to the planning department, we're talking to City Hall, and anticipating, just planting the seed that they may want to consider that type of land use change going forward.
We know you're super busy working on a lot of things down there, and we've got a question about conventions and conferences. And if you can tell us what the chamber is doing to work with the mayor and the city in terms of getting folks back and filling up Moscone.
Yeah, so SF Travel is really on point with that, but we are working with them to try to make sure that conventions get back. Obviously, the hotel industry is so important to San Francisco. This is something everyone should remember and repeat. 1/3 of San Francisco's economy comes from tourism, whether that's a restaurant, whether that's a hotel stay, whether it's a taxi cab ride, a meeting in a bar, a buyout of a hotel ballroom for a kickoff lunch. So important that tourism, both the business travel, convention, and leisure, all three need to be firing. But the convention market is so important, and you're starting to see hotels open back up. The big Hilton Towers is back open. And so we're starting to see that confidence grow again. Really quick side note to give a little bit of encouragement to that. According to Kayak, searches for San Francisco to travel to as a destination are higher than they were pre-COVID. So I think people are starting to do the shopping. If any of you have tried to book a flight lately, they're actually really difficult and incredibly expensive all over. So I think we're going to start to see tremendous movement, but by the fall.
Have you gotten any comments from your friends in the hotel industry if bookings for future stays are roughly what they expected at this point, or kind of better or worse than they were hoping for, or they just don't know yet?
I don't know. I haven't heard that specific question, but that's a good one. I'll try to find that back out and get that to you.
Cool. We had a question. You had briefly mentioned City Beats, which I believe is your annual breakfast. If you could, what's the scoop on City Beats?
Hey, City Beat will be virtual. Unfortunately, this year, it's June 24th, 11 a.m. You can register for it on sfchamber.com. The mayor will be speaking. Dignity Health is going to launch a poll survey of where San Franciscans feel they are in San Francisco, what they feel they need. So important for us to understand that, where the residents of San Francisco, the voters of San Francisco really want to take the city. And then we have a very interesting speaker, Ezekwe Anderson. Ezekwe Anderson is a product of COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter. He started a bakery for the very first time during COVID. He's doing incredibly well. His bread is wonderful. It's sourdough bread. It's being offered at Rainbow Grocers, a number of really cool elite cafes here in San Francisco. So we want to feature him and have him share his stories about how difficult and easy maybe it is to open a business in San Francisco.
Before the pandemic began, really, it seemed like the Chamber of Commerce was focused on advocating around quality of life issues that we were all experiencing as business and citizens. Is that really still going to be the focus going forward, or is at this point it's really kind of that's got to take a back seat while you guys help make sure we've got a business community?
I think they're hand in hand, Matt, and I don't think we can just focus on, pushing a business attraction to San Francisco without talking about the streets and the conditions of the city and mental health and housing. This is a time where everything, more than I've ever seen, all funnels together. Education, the methodology in which San Franciscans can feel comfortable staying here for multi-generations, rooting themselves in San Francisco, public art, transit, the confidence of BART, getting back on BART, housing costs, food insecurities. I mean, all of it is just mushed together more than ever before, which is probably great because that means everyone should be getting equal attention to all of these issues. But San Francisco, from our perspective, the symbiotic relationship of all those things I mentioned and more are really at the forefront right now. And hopefully everyone is thinking about San Francisco as a whole and how we participate in not just their particular industry sector, private, public, whatever. So, it's oversaid, but we are all together in this.
So the mayor recently introduced a massive spending program targeted at homelessness. Has the chamber taken a position on that, good, bad, or indifferent?
We think it's a good idea. We're supportive of that. As some of you remember, there was a Prop C initiative, a ballot measure a few years ago. This is going to release hundreds of millions of dollars towards the homeless situation. The mayor's support on it, I think, is important. Money is one thing. The political will and how we spend that money and how we make folks accountable for how we spend that money is really important. So in a funny way, San Franciscans, and I've been here for a long time, as you mentioned, we all need to get involved and really understand the issues on all sides of it to really make sure that the monies are being spent properly and that we're making progress on the streets of San Francisco.
So I know that you're not the only chamber of commerce in America. When you're out there talking to your peers, how is San Francisco doing compared to the rest of the Bay Area and the rest of the nation?
Early COVID, I jumped on a national call, and a lot of them were resistant about COVID and shutting down. And as you know, San Francisco and the Bay Area is one of the first to shut down. And when I mentioned I was from San Francisco, I could kind of hear the chuckles in the room that you guys are absolutely crazy. Keep it open, keep it open. I think San Francisco did, from a health perspective, the absolutely right thing, that we protected our vulnerable communities. We're paying a price though, because we're on one of the last to open. And if many of you probably have traveled, or if you haven't, there are other cities on the West Coast, but also on the East Coast that are open and thriving. Florida, as if it never existed. We're gonna bounce back. I think we have a lot of gifts that here in San Francisco that we were able to have a lot of tech jobs or even other jobs that we could work from home. And not every city has that advantage when they're manufacturing, producing, growing stuff. They don't have that ability. And so we are blessed and cursed by that we were able to work from home. I think San Francisco's art and culture and music and food is why people are here. They're not here for the office cubicles necessarily. And we talk about the downtown and how we're going to get it back. Hey man, it's not about going downtown to sit in the office with your coworker. It's really about what you're doing after work, where you're going to dinner, who you're meeting up with, who you're connecting with before, after work, maybe even going to the gym and have a social scene there. So the social part of the business side of San Francisco is really important. And I think San Francisco did it right. Again, we're going to have to bounce back out of this, but there certainly seems, and you can all attest to this, in the real estate market, there's a lot of cash and liquid assets in the Bay Area and wanting still to come to the Bay Area. So that's an important and important advantage that we need to recognize why we're different than other cities.
So when I'm out meeting with buyers and sellers, one of the most common questions I get, Rodney, is what does the work from home phenomena mean for the long-term real estate market of San Francisco? So when you're out there speaking with big employers, what are you hearing about their long-term plans for city real estate and the thinking around if people are going to need to be in a city.
You know, what I think is interesting is that for some of the larger companies, the big logos that we know, they really didn't buy San Francisco real estate as a company. There are only a handful of large companies that bought downtown real estate office buildings. For the most part, they were leasing them. That, I believe, told us that they could bug out anytime they wanted to, and gave some liquidity to their investment here in San Francisco. I think we need to try to think about bigger picture and how we make businesses who are growing in San Francisco become rooted and invested in San Francisco, invested in our school system, invested in our real estate, invested in our parks. That is probably the way that we're able to really maintain a multi-generational rooting in San Francisco, which any great city has that. You look at New York City, Boston, it's multi-generational pieces. And quite honestly, some of the videos that came out during COVID and sort of bashing San Francisco, imagine if you took that camera and said that same message in Brooklyn or in the Bronx. People would come after you with baseball bats with such pride, civic pride about their city. And San Francisco needs to rebuild that. And we do that one by one family at a time, one business at a time with that civic pride.
Awesome. The graphs you had shown earlier where you're working, I think you had mentioned that's public source data. Where does that, is that all data, is that driven by the 311 calls?
It's from 311 different sources. It's 311 calls. It's City Hall's open data. It's opentable.com for the restaurant reopenings. So take a look at it. It's sfchamber.com on the data page, and you can click on the sources. You can download it. Please feel free to use that. Just kind of reference the Chamber of Commerce. But I think it would be incredibly important for your industry, realtors, to be able to talk about where San Francisco has been, is, and is going.
And the reason I ask that is one of the questions we often get is, you know, we're out and about every day and we see all kinds of horrible things that we think someone should be doing something about. So, and we want that data to be collected. So making sure we talk to 311 is probably still our best way.
Yeah, you know, and even as the police department tells, they want us to report stuff. They want us to use 311. They want us to make and call. They'll never know about it, and they can't address it unless we report it. So for whatever reason, we got a little bit bashful about reporting stuff. Hey, report it. This is really important from a funding perspective, from a location perspective, and again, the stats that we're pulling here, it'll start to reflect in there. So download that 311 app.
Awesome. Rodney, you have been an incredible guest, and I so appreciate your time this morning. Anything else you want to say before you go about your Friday?
No, hey, it's a great weekend out there. The weather looks really nice. So enjoy San Francisco, spend a little money. You guys are doing a great job attracting new families to San Francisco. And that is really important. It is, well, we have a city that is pretty low on the kids side. It's important that we have kids in San Francisco. Kids drive a lot of the economy. Kids drive a lot of the school system and where we're going. And as we're all reading the paper, we need to change that. So keep doing what you're doing. And thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Rodney. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We started out with Katie Tang. Then we had Rodney Fong from the Chamber of Commerce. And next up, we have two gentlemen that are here to speak to us about a segment of the market that is always interesting and can always perhaps tell us a lot about what's going on. Both of these gentlemen are from the fine company of Polaris Pacific. Miles Garber is the Vice President of Research. And we have John Palante, whose name I hope I did not mispronounce, who is also a managing director at Polaris Pacific and has worked on a wide variety of their projects, not only here in San Francisco, but up and down the coast from Seattle to Los Angeles. And John doesn't know this, but because he is the man who sold the most expensive condo in Manhattan, clocking in at $100 million. Lunch is on John today. Just kidding, John. We're super psyched to have both of you here joining us today. And I will turn it over to you to tell us about what is happening in new construction.
Thanks, Matt. Can I turn my video on? I'm trying that, but if not, I'll just go on with my deck. Oops.
We've got your deck, but not your video.
Okay, I'm trying to hit share video and it's saying it can't start because the host has stopped it for me.
That would be Genevieve's fault,
Okay.
not mine.
All right.
Genevieve!
Once that's ready, I'll just continue on with my deck. So I'm going to start with this sort of a key takeaways and a market update. And then after that, I'm going to transition to and ask some questions to John Palante, our managing director, who oversees our One Stewart Lane project, of his experience selling, over the last year in this very challenging market.
And we've
so
got
kind
you
of
on video, Miles, so
What's
you're
that?
good.
Okay,
We've got you on
perfect.
video now.
Awesome. So some really quick takeaways. The first sort of 3 to 4 months of COVID were really, really scary for us. We had to shut down our sales centers, construction, a lot of our projects completely came to a halt. And we were really bracing for something, like what we encountered in 2008, at the end of 2007. And we were, thinking at that time, what are we going to do? But as stimulus came in from the government, as our sales centers reopened, as construction resumed on a lot of projects, we encountered a challenging market, but a much better market than we encountered in 2008. And to really, drive this point home, we had a couple hundred open escrows, going into COVID. And of those, more than 90% of the buyers that were in escrow closed during COVID. In contrast, during the Great Recession in 2008, fewer than 50% of our buyers were able to close escrow at that time. While we're dealing with some, higher than normal inventory levels right now in terms of unsold condominiums on the market, months of remaining inventory is still low and sales are very strong right now. So, all that really points to a very positive market. What has been a challenge for us is a lot of timelines on future condo projects have been delayed. So there's going to be a gap, and I'll show this later in my slide deck, for years 2022 and 2023, even into 2024, where we're not going to see a lot of new condo developments come on the market here in San Francisco. And while there's been challenges, throughout this market and over the past year, most of the challenges have been really confined to specific areas. We saw earlier on a slide, that heat map showing where crime has been up in the city, and Soma and mid-market, or portions of Soma and mid-market in particular, have been really the hardest hit submarkets in terms of decline in sales volumes and price drops over the last year. But despite the challenges that we had encountered over the last year in the condo market compared to the apartment market, we're really outperforming. The condo market has really outperformed the apartment market. And in the apartment market, saw both occupancies and rents, were some of the largest declines ever experienced in the city. And records that we have, which go back 50 years, they were the worst in the last 50 years in terms of both occupancy and rent declines. And, there's been a lot of media speculation about the exodus of people leaving San Francisco and going to other states. Right now, it's a little inconclusive. Some people are away still and will come back in September. They're either living with relatives or Airbnb in other spots. But based on what we're able to see today, it seems to be that there's more of a regional shift of people moving, let's say, from San Francisco to outer regions of the East Bay or to areas of Sacramento, and less of a full exodus from the state of California to other low-tax states. This graph here shows median price and how it compares to a year ago and just sort of his historic trend. So right now we're down about 5% from a year ago. The worst it ever got was about 10% over the last year in terms of price declines. Much better than the Great Recession, where price declines were about 25%. This slide here on the left, we're showing both median price, and you can already see that sales are already, median price is already starting to pick up in markets like the Richmond district and the Sunset. But on the right, it's showing transactions compared to a year ago, and you can just see there's massive increases in sales across every district of San Francisco compared to a year ago. They're up overall for the city 119% from where they were a year ago. This side here in red is new condos and in black is resale condominiums. So inventory, this is unsold inventory, which this is showing, is slightly down from where it was a year ago. And it's slightly elevated for the resales than it was a year ago, but has already declined for the new condominiums from a year ago. But despite that, increase in inventory, we're still seeing this graph shows months of remaining inventory. And we're really dealing with only 2 months of inventory. And a balanced market, just to give context, is 6 months. And you can see here, Great Recession, it reached up almost up to about 12 months. But 2 months is a really, really strong market. And of the sales that have been occurring, most of them have been occurring between 800 to 900,000. And on a per square foot level, most of the sales have occurred between $1,000 and $1,200 per square foot. Talked earlier about there's going to be a decline in overall deliveries. So you can see kind of in historic context of how many condos were delivered in a specific year. The highest watermark was 2008, where over 2,000 condominiums were delivered in a single year. But you look out in 2022, 2023, and 2024, we're not going to see a lot of new condos being delivered. And of those, most will be just small scale neighborhood projects. You're not going to see really any towers or any super luxury projects being delivered in those 2022, 2023, and 2024. Talked earlier about the performance of the apartment market and how drastic things really changed in the apartment market in the last year. Really looking at about a 20% decrease in rents, but that's just face rents. Once you add in incentives of getting up to 3 months and other perks, you're looking at a decline more like 35% from where rents were a year ago. But despite that decline, the apartment market has come back, and it's starting to come back from the depths of the market. It's up about 10% from a year ago. And this is occupancy, which really just fell off a cliff during COVID. And that's already starting to make a comeback at this point. So I don't have time to go through all the currently selling projects on the market. So I'm just going to focus on some high profile ones and then transition to cover all the new condo projects that we expect to see on the market through the end of the year. So the first one is MIRA by Tishman Speyer, and a lot of you on this call are familiar with this. The Gina Gang Tower, it's won all sorts of design awards. We had closings that began in June of last year. This was one that we're selling that we're very afraid of how many people would close with all this construction delays and all the uncertainty. But again, at this project, over 90% of the buyers that were in contract here closed escrow, which really shows the strength of this market. 1 Stewart Lane is a project where John Plante is overseeing the sales and marketing of. Again, this is a project really that shows the strength of the market. Even in the depths of COVID, we were able to really get some high watermarks sales and put them under contract, which I was really amazed by. I really didn't think that was going to occur even in the depths of COVID. Seraph's another project that we recently launched in the mid-market neighborhood. Eventually there'll be a line hotel that will be attached to it, and sales are just sort of starting right now. There has been some challenge given its location, but we really hope that the mid-market neighborhood will turn a corner and things will do very well at this project. Bristol's another one I'm sure a lot of you have seen, crossing over the Bay Bridge. This is Wilson Meany's first project. It's related, but it's actually not part of the overall Treasure Island master plan, which infrastructure has started on, and there'll be a series of both low-rise and larger towers that will come to Treasure Island in the coming years. But this is sort of its first foray, and sales were started pre-COVID, then they shut things down for a number of months, and then they recently resumed sales at this project. The Avery is another one. Things have been a little slower there over the last year. This is the first time, or at least of a large scale project, where apartments are on the ground floor and then there's condominiums above. And this is a related project. And 181 Fremont, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of on this call. This project, because The developer, J. Paul, the bottom portion they had leased the bottom portion to Facebook and / Instagram, paid off the construction loan, and now really only wants $3,000 per square foot from the remaining units, and is fine to do 1 or 2 sales a year going forward until that sort of per square foot target is hit. So not a lot of sales that have occurred there, nor will there be in the coming years until they get that $3,000 per square foot price point. Four Seasons private residence, it's gotten a lot of attention. Steph Curry had bought a unit here pre-COVID. They started closings in about November of last year. Things have been a little slower here, and as a result of that, they've done sort of a rent-to-own program to encourage more people to come and live in the building and eventually purchase. So that was sort of the major projects that are on the market today. I'm going to just highlight some of the coming soon projects that we expect to see on the market through the end of the year. First one is 2238 Market Street by Prada Group. This one's in the Upper Market / Castro neighborhood. Sales are going to start most likely in July. It's 5 stories, 42 units, both new construction and adaptive reuse. Then we have the QUINN on 8th Street in Soma, 38 units, 5 stories. Sales are expected to start there sort of mid-July. 88 at the Park, sales are expected to start in June, later this month. And there's about 127 units, 4 stories, and this is in Potrero Hill proper. And Noir is a very interesting project. It's 8 stories, and they're basically 1 unit per floor, which we haven't seen a lot of in San Francisco. That's much more common sort of product type you'd see in Manhattan. And location-wise, it's very, very closely a block away from the Whole Foods in Pacific Heights. And the Oak is another project right near the intersection of Market and Van Ness. ZNL Properties, 109 units, which are expected to come on the market later this summer. And then we have another one with J.S. Sullivan, which most likely will trail to the fall. It's on 7th Street, very close to the QUINN project, which I mentioned earlier. So that's it for projects coming in the market through 2021. Just some final thoughts on the market. Sales are really strong right now, and they're really depleting through this sort of higher inventory, which I showed on my slide. Over the last year, there's really been a shift in buyer sentiment from San Francisco being a city from I need to be here to a city where I want to be here. And as demand becomes more elastic and buyers have more choices because they can work remotely or only have to come into an office come September, 2 or 3 days a week, they've been less and less tolerant as time goes by to neighborhood crime and homelessness. And as a result of that, what we predict is that the rising tide, which we already have seen in December and January when vaccines were announced and people started coming back to San Francisco in large numbers, is that this rising tide that we're experiencing is not going to lift all boats. And if some neighborhoods really don't put under control the rise in crime and the homelessness problem, things are not going to get better. The rising tide is not going to lift all boats. And another thing too is, construction costs really didn't come down this last year, and certain material prices, especially of lumber, have gone up exponentially. So that's really put a lot of uncertainty on the market, and developers and both equity investors and lenders who lend to developers hate the word uncertainty. So we're definitely going to see a lull, as I mentioned before, in deliveries of new condos, really going for the next 3 years. So that's some final thoughts. At this point, I'm going to transition over and ask John Palante, who oversees our 1 Steuart Lane project, some questions tied to his experience selling super luxury projects in this market over the last year. So John, the first question I have for you is, what were some of the major challenges you encountered selling a super luxury project during the pandemic?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Sure. So I oversee, as everyone said, 1 Steuart Lane. I think the largest challenge we had, we started sales in an offsite sales gallery at 1 Market Plaza. 1 Steuart Lane construction will be completed this August. So we started sales about 15 months before construction was going to be completed. So we did have about 30 days of sales before the city shut down. And I think our largest challenge was our buyer just left San Francisco. I think Rodney said earlier, you know, a lot of people left San Francisco, left all urban markets for, you know, when everything shut down. And especially that high-end buyer that has a lot of disposable income and kind of go anywhere on a private jet, they all hightailed to Hawaii or Tahoe or elsewhere. So they just weren't in the city. As Miles said, we did have a couple buyers that came through in February, put everything on pause, and then summer, fall came back and did purchase. But getting new buyers in, it was nearly impossible for, you know, really most of 2020 because they just weren't in the city.
Great. And for the projects that you oversee, you know, what changes were made to the marketing or sales strategy of new condos in the wake of COVID? And sort of dovetailing on that question, you know, of these changes, which were temporary and which do you believe will outlast the pandemic?
Sure, and I'm sure this will come as no surprise, but obviously digital and virtual assets became super important. Getting Matterport scans, getting videos, getting additional photography. We actually went in the building very early on under construction to get images of the views of the construction progress. So it's getting more digital assets. You know, we already knew at Polaris Pacific that, you know, I think it's like 90% of people start their real estate search online on their phone mostly. So we already were really focused on online and digital assets, but it only went hyper crazy during COVID. So for all of our projects, you know, especially, I forget to mention it earlier, but, you know, from until July, our sales teams were home. They couldn't even be in the office. We were able to have them go back in and do some appointments starting last summer. But what we found even now, even, you know, a year and a half in, is some buyers and some prospects, they're doing a lot more research before they even come into the sales gallery. They're asking a lot more questions. Their agents are asking a lot more questions. They're asking for a lot more materials digitally before they come in. So the more materials, the more assets we can provide via email, via a shared screen is key, because people really don't want to come in, that looky-loo, that I'm going to come kick tires. They're really doing that from home. They're not coming in to do that in person until they're very serious to make an offer, or they know that they want to live at the project. And I think that's going to stay for a while. I think, you know, post-COVID, is I think someone mentioned earlier, you know, we want to travel, we want to be at restaurants. People, I think, if they're looking for real estate, they're going to be much more hyper-focused and doing more research before they come in. So I really see that becoming standard. And as Miles said, we're active in a lot of markets. And when I see other markets, I really do think the West Coast, we're super on it in terms of the Matterports, the videos. It's just something I think the entire real estate community does really well in California. But if you look at New York, you look at other markets, they're just enough to speed on having those digital assets that are really impactful and make a difference in someone making a decision before they come in.
Great. And have the demands of buyers changed in the wake of COVID?
Yeah, again, I think this is what you'd expect, right? The good thing about One Steuart Lane is almost all of our homes have some outdoor space, and that's been a real game changer for us as it relates to the competition. To have a private balcony or private terrace, buyers are really flocking to that, to have that indoor-outdoor flow, to have fresh air in the home. I'm sure, as many of you know, condominiums, those windows in those towers only open a little bit to get you fresh air. So to have a sliding glass door or a swing door that you can open and get fresh air, buyers have really been looking for that, especially at One Steuart Lane where we're on the water, we're on the bay. So they're really, that's something that I really see a big difference there. People are coming in specifically looking for homes that have that outdoor space. They are thinking about working from home and having larger spaces, you know, for the super high end, where they might have been looking for a 2-bedroom pied-à-terre and that would have been okay with them. They're now upgrading their budget to get more space at home. They're thinking about entertaining more at home, having guests there, having that home office, obviously. So they're not, you know, as I said before, they might have said, okay, I'll take a 2-bedroom at $3-4 million. Now they're saying, okay, let me see your 3-bedrooms at $6-7 million, because they want that extra space and they don't want to compromise. I feel like we've all been stuck at home and compromising for the last year, that they're willing to spend the extra money to get really what they want. So I think there's less of that and more of, I'm going to get what I want because of the uncertainty. They really want it now in terms of paying up for checking all the boxes.
Great. The last question I have is, what was the biggest surprise you encountered about the San Francisco market since sort of the start of 2021?
So I'll end this on a positive. I went to school for urban planning, and when we reopened our sales gallery, I would go to one market and there would be literally like nobody on the streets at the Embarcadero, at Market Street, at Spear Street, where our office is. I mean, just you wouldn't see a person, and it was pretty eerie. And since July of this year until now, it's only got busier and busier and busier. So it's great to see people coming back to the city, life during the day, life during the evening. And I think the biggest surprise I've seen is a lot of our buyers are buying a city home because they live in Los Altos, they live in the East Bay, they live in Atherton, and they're buying now because they're ready to go back to Giants games. They're ready to go back to the Symphony. They want to go to restaurants. They want to come back to the city. And so I think the biggest surprise is someone said earlier, you know, there was all this news that cities were going to die. And that's just not true. We're seeing super high-end buyers come in, spend $6, $7, $8 million just for a city home because they missed that energy and they know it's going to come back. So, and that really took off January, February of this year. So it really wasn't, I think, until the vaccine started rolling, the election was decided and we knew what was going on, people really started coming back into the city and super excited to get back to urban life, which has been great to see.
Great. Thanks, John. Wraps up our deck. I'll put it back over to you, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you, both John and Miles. Miles, I remember a couple of years ago, we were doing this in person. And at the time, there were 3 mega projects that we had discussed, one of which was Park Merced rental projects, the other 2 being the Shipyard and Treasure Island / Yerba Buena. And those 2 mega projects really seem like they've let us down. Do you expect to see those coming online or getting back to life, or is there any update, especially kind of on the candlestick part of what was supposed to happen down there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't expect much from this sort of Shipyard candlestick for the next few years. I think they're still working on stuff with the Navy and still dealing with the Tetra Tech scandal and the contaminated soils. So unfortunately, you know, I'm not too optimistic about that project in particular. I am more optimistic about Treasure Island, you know, now that we've worked with all the various groups that are involved in that project over the last year, and they're really fully committed to that project. And I think that that's a very interesting project in this location in the city. And it's also really set up very well from, you know, a safety perspective and from an indoor, outdoor, and other these amenities that people are really looking for in a post-COVID environment. So I'm much more bullish on that one of the 3 that you mentioned.
And if we pop back over to the ultra luxury market, I think that the kind of last on the maybe to happen was the Oceanwide project in terms of ocean. Is that still a go, or has that one gotten shelved?
It's still, there's still some life to that. I'm actually gonna go back to John, because John had experience both here in San Francisco and especially in Los Angeles dealing with the Oceanwide projects. So I'm gonna put it over to him to answer that.
The Oceanwide is still hanging on. I think they'd like to build. I think they're looking at their entitlements to figure out. I mean, look, I'm sure everyone knows 1 Steuart Lane, 181 Fremont, Avery, Four Seasons. There's a lot of high-end, uber luxury, $7, $8 million product in that neighborhood. So I think they are re-looking at their entitlements to see what really makes sense in that location. I think it's common knowledge they've got $1 billion hole that they've already built, so they've got a lot of money invested there. So I know they also, Oceanwide also has 3 towers that are basically completed and topped out here. They just need to finish them, that have been paused for over 2 years. So they've got a lot of work to do, but I know they still have an active office. They still have an active team that's here in the US. So as far as I know, they do want to finish it. I think they're just re-looking at what makes the most sense for that neighborhood in terms of economics.
Yeah,
gotcha.
You know, I'll add to it too, the project here, you know, it's very unclear what's happening in the office market, you know, as people transition to either working remotely or at least a hybrid. and a big aspect of the San Francisco project, was an office portion with residents above. So without clarity of what's happening on the office market, I think that's going to be hard to push forward. And then I think they did lose the hotel brand. So finding another brand that's compatible with what they're trying to do will be another challenge for that project.
So one of your slides had kind of the activity by price point and at what price points the most condos were sold.
Yeah.
So, and that was kind of the 800 to $1 million range, let's say. Have you seen activity and demand return across all of your price points, or is ultra luxury, for example, leading the way, or is everyone just excited to be back?
So I think the challenge, so we've seen it across all price bands, but ultra luxury is unique in that people that buy in that segment want something that's really one of a kind, in a unique project. And I think I don't want to shit on certain projects that are, don't have a unique attributes, but one that does obviously is like One Steuart Lane is on the water. It's going to be very rare to see a project that's on the Embarcadero in the future. It might never happen again, like to have a location like One Steuart Lane. And Pacific is another project, that we sold in Pacific Heights. Prior to that project, nothing had been built in Pacific Heights proper in 40 years. So they really want something that's very unique, that is one of a kind, that can never be built. And so we could see, very high sales that occur, but they're going to want that thing. It might not occur at all projects. And so that's sort of my answer. John, anything you want to add to that?
I think the only trend that we've also seen across the board is like the studios. Those like 400 square foot studios are a little struggle right now because I think people are rethinking about how they live. I think we're seeing a lot of demand for 1-bedrooms. MIRA has been doing extremely well in terms of selling. I also mentioned like pre-construction is very difficult. People want to feel and touch it now. They don't want to just buy into the dream. So MIRA's really taken off since it's completed. So I don't think there's any one type that's really outperforming the other, but I do think those really compact studios are going to have a tough time until the city really comes back to full capacity.
Yeah.
And John, if I could kind of follow on that question. It used to be that in San Francisco, we love to do pre-sales years and years in advance of the building being done. And I've noticed here that developers really, or their marketing team, say, wait until the building's done. So is that kind of what you're seeing? Like people want the digital assets to do the research, but when they come, they actually want to see a finished product. Do you think that's been a change, or it's just a coincidence?
I think it's always supply and demand, right? Like when we opened Lumina years ago, there was such demand and little supply. So we were able to sell majority of Lumina's 656 homes, pre-construction. I think you're still seeing, when there's demand and lack of affordability and lack of certain types, pre-construction sales do work. Also for takeout lending for the buyers to get mortgages, we have to have a certain percent sold. It's anywhere from 35 to 50% sold. So there has to be a very even balance between opening early so you get enough sales that people can start to close, but not too early that people are just going to wait and see. So we like to open about a year in advance. That was our goal for One Steuart Lane. We opened in February of last year. We were a little delayed because of COVID. So I think you'll still see pre-sales specifically because of that pre-sale requirement for buyers to close. But I don't think you'll see it more than 12 months in advance. I don't think you'll see buildings opening 2-3 years in advance.
Awesome. One final question for you, and Miles, perhaps you'll have the answer to this one. When you're out talking to your developer clients, where are they looking to buy land and do projects? Like what's really far out in the pipeline? Are they still interested in building in the city? Have they moved to suburbia? It looks like we've got a limited number of inventory in the next couple of years, kind of the neighborhood boutique mid-sized building. What's beyond that? What are they thinking right now?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of showed on my slide, you will see a lot of neighborhood projects coming in the next 3 years. Beyond that, most of the supply will be coming in large master plans. So Pier 70 and Dogpatch, the Trail Power Plant are some of the areas that will, get a lot of that future supply. And I'm very, bullish on those areas. Treasure Island's another. And so, I feel pretty strongly about sort of the large master plans moving forward. John, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think the spotlight's on the suburbs right now, but I think once the freeway traffic comes back and that bridge is jam packed, people are going to be looking to get back in the city. They all forget it now, and it's already coming back. But once it's at full capacity and it's taking you an hour to get from Oakland to the city, people are going to say, forget this, and come back. So I think, to Miles's point, I mean, we're seeing mostly master plans, like super large scale and then super small, like 30 units or 3,000 units. That's kind of there's nothing really in the middle.
Yeah. And then outside of the city, we've seen a lot of interest in Silicon Valley, Los Altos, Mountain View, and then downtown San Jose have been ones that of clients that we have here in San Francisco that have considered those areas just to kind of diversify their holdings. And Silicon Valley has been just exceptionally strong over the last year. And while things have improved vastly in San Francisco since January, in Silicon Valley, they've been strong the whole time through.
Awesome. Miles and John, thank you both so much. Really appreciate your expertise and your time and sharing what's happening in the new construction market with us. Anything you want to say before you go?
No, I think I covered it. Anything else, John, you want to cover?
No, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All righty, thank you both. Thank you, John, and thank you, Miles. And next, we go from new construction to resale construction, which means we're going to be talking about the multiple listing service. As we all know, there was a rollout of the super regional MLS, which brings with it some great things and has brought with it some bumps. So to give us an update today on where things are, what's happening, and how hard his team has been working, because believe me, his team has been working really hard. We have our director of MLS and Internet IT, whatever your title is these days, Jay. Our #1 Canadian, Jay Pepper Martins. How are you, sir?
I'm doing not bad, Matt. How are you?
I am great. Are you back in America yet?
I am. I'm actually sitting here in San Francisco. I'm using a virtual background, but I could just have it out the window and you'd see downtown. I'm in Civic Center at the office. The office looks great. We're getting ready to reopen.
I'm sitting here in San Francisco, Jay. I feel like we have so much in common.
Well, we also have an opportunity to maybe get some lunch together. I understand that's permissible now. Is that true?
Outside.
Outside. Sounds good.
I think you can eat inside, but it scares me. That said, nobody wants to hear my lunch plans. They want to hear what's going on with the MLS. So talk to me.
Sure. So obviously we rolled this thing out in February. It shifted from design, theoretical, let's get this thing ready, into practical, let's see what the real effects are. Of course, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of benefit, but there's also been speed bumps. So I don't think I need to go through the list of all of it, but I would like to point out that we're seeing that agents can now work anywhere in the Bay Area. The idea of putting in a listing in one place, that listing goes everywhere. You don't have to duplicate your work. This is becoming reality. The major goals of reducing your workload are materializing. Of course, as you mentioned, there are speed bumps, things like some applications don't have all the data yet. We're working on all of those things. I've actually got a list of applications that do have all of the data combined. I'm going to share with everyone here today. And I'm also going to take a look specifically at what's been the impact on the San Francisco inventory, just with regard to the on-market data, which is really the most important data. Of course, comp data, historical data, also crucial, but what's changed with our on-market situation. And I also think we should talk a little bit about coming soon and what's going to happen with coming soon in the future.
Awesome.
Okay,
Where
cool.
do you want to start?
Well, why don't we start with what's happening with the current inventory? This is something I've been wanting to share with everyone as publicly as possible. It was sort of one of the reasons for existing. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if all the technology works today. Let me know if you can see an Excel spreadsheet. Looks good. Great. Okay, so here's the problem that we had prior to rolling out. We had a bunch of MLSs in the region. We had agents that belonged to multiple MLSs. Agents would put data into whichever MLS they felt like was the most important. Usually that would be their home system, right? So you wake up, you're a Napa agent, you're going to put your listing, even if it's a city listing, you're going to put it into the Barry's MLS. That just happens to be your home system. So the problem would be that if you're a San Francisco agent, you may not see that listing until you go to Barry's and look for it, and that's counterintuitive. Why do I have to go to an outside thing in order to see listing data that's on the market right now? That was a major pain point. Also, it was always unclear about would Barry send that data to Zillow, or would Barry send that data to any of the brokerage websites that you would commonly look at. And so to overcome this, you put your listing in one MLS, it now goes everywhere, and here's been the change. So in the city of San Francisco, our inventory hasn't really changed dramatically, but we now have full coverage. If I go and pull every single listing that's currently on the market, coming soon, or in a contingent status of some kind, I can now see from the MLS numbers and doing a little analysis on my end, which ones came from other systems. So what I've done is I've pulled together a list of counts here to show you that we still get the bulk of our listings from ourselves. That makes good sense. But we're also now getting almost 100 listings from MLS listings who's south of us. These are your friends who work in San Mateo, Santa Clara, down the peninsula. And we're getting another almost 50 listings from our East Bay counterparts, the ones who use a system called Paragon. These are your friends in Oakland and some who work in like Alameda County, Contra Costa, maybe inland. So what this has done is it's added 10% additional to our inventory. This is a huge win. It means that when you look and search in the city, you're no longer limited to just what SFAR agents put in the city. Instead of having to go to some outside thing and find all this extra data, you've now got 10% extra inventory right at your fingertips. This is the snapshot for real on-market data right now today. Historically, we've also got all this data pulled in going all the way back to 2004. So doing comps.
Can I TO you right there just for
Sure.
1 second?
Yeah.
So to be blunt, this replaces Quattro.
Oh, without a doubt. This replaces every other interface you may have had to search in before with, I'll put a little star on it because we're going to talk about coming soon.
Because these listings that we're talking about, the 10% additional, these are listings that would have been entered in, you know, those other MLS listings or Paragon. And unless I went and searched Quattro a year ago, I would have never seen them in the system. And they may or may not have hit any of the partner apps my buyers are using to search with, correct?
Bingo, 100%.
So even if I'm not happy about these out of area agents selling in my city, I'm at least happy I can see the inventory.
Well, that's what I'm hoping, is that the inventory trumps all the other concerns. Where before things were hidden, or your worst case scenario, your buyer might come to you as an agent representing them and say, hey, what about this listing I saw just down the street from these other ones you sent me? And when you go look in SFAR MLS, you couldn't find it. Oh, there it was. Over there, it was entered in East Bay by an East Bay agent. So your client may have found it on Zillow. Those stories are going away, and they're going to totally evaporate over the next couple of months as the wrinkles even out.
Awesome. So I think we were gonna, before I interrupted you, we were on to coming soon, yes?
Yes, that's right. So the coming soon exchange of data between MLSs is complicated by one very important thing, which is none of us had common rules for coming soon. As San Francisco agents, we sort of blazed a bit of a trail out into the coming soon territory. We did so back in 2014, 15, 16, tried a number of different ways of capturing all that inventory. Now, our rules were different than our partners, and this led to conflicts where if we give our listings to a partner, would they be able to handle that data in a way that respected our requirements? And largely, we've all come to some consensus with a caveat about MetroList. The Sacramento area MLS doesn't have a coming soon status and probably isn't going to implement one ever. So right now there's a limitation where none of us as MLSs can give our data to the Central Valley group because they don't have a way to represent it that makes sense to us. But I want to show you a timetable of when you can expect to see and what you can already see with coming soon data. Let me know if you can see this updated spreadsheet that shows a table of MLSs. You see it?
Not yet.
No?
Not yet.
Okay, let's try this. Let's do this. There we go. So now you can see I've got an axis here, a spreadsheet that shows you what's happening with coming soon. On the left are the MLSs used to input data. Across the top is where they should show up. So if you are an SFAR member, you can see that the East Bay can see our coming soon data as of 6/2. Same with MLS listings. If you put the listing into SFAR MLS, when will they see it in Barry's? They'll see that listing in the Barry's MLS, Napa, Sonoma, that group of people. They're going to see that data in July. And we'll also start to see the berries data in July. There's a sort of an interesting system problem where berries and SFAR are on the same platform, and we hard coded some rules about not sharing coming soon initially. We're going to tear that all apart and rebuild it. So here's where the dates are for being able to see and be seen by your reciprocal MLS partners. And you can see it's mostly green. This is very exciting. We love green. Green means it's already live and it's good to go. The exchange of data with MLS listings, where the data goes into MLS listings, will show up in berries and SFAR starting next week if we hit our marks and we're looking good. And we'll have the data exchanged with berries shortly after that, a few weeks later. But this is going to clear up that one problem where you might have felt like you couldn't see the coming soons in MLS listings or in berries.
So if I'm reading this chart correctly, by the end of mid-July, with the exception of MetroList, which we're just going to pretend doesn't exist because they pretend coming soon doesn't exist, all of the systems will have interoperability with coming soon.
For all listing statuses. That's what's so exciting, is coming soon is the last piece of a very complicated puzzle where, yes, it will complete the puzzle. There'll be that one corner piece missing for Sacramento and the Central Valley, but until they have a more compatible method of displaying our data, we just aren't sure what we'll do to give it to them. Don't think there's a way.
Gotcha. Do you have any numbers on what coming soon usage has been this year, or how it had changed dramatically after Fair Play, Real Play, whatever that?
Yes, I definitely can share some numbers there for sure. So why don't I just pull open my web browser here? I'm already logged in. This is one of the things that's most exciting. I know that launch of or the implementation of the Clear Cooperation rules has been controversial, but the net result is really great. I'm going to go do a standard search, and I'm just going to pull the residential. We'll skip all the other property types, and I'm just going to pull where we're coming soon, and with no dates. And let's just take a look at what the inventory is. Wow, that is across the entire Bay Area, including some of the data that we are able to get from our reciprocal partners like the East Bay. So we've got their coming soon data now too. We've got 483 coming soon listings in the entire aggregate system area. That's up from the 20 or 22 we would have had this month prior to the Clear Cooperation 2 years ago. And the reason for this is obviously because it's driven by mandate. But the really great part is, as agents, you now have windows of visibility into what's going on. Let's limit this to just the city and county of San Francisco. So I'm just going to thin this out a bit. And 156 in the city. Let's view those results. This is awesome. This is a 10-fold increase of available data in the city that you have right now. And there's going to be a few more listings coming to us yet from our partner berries when we get that data integrated here in July. So this number is only going to go up. I'm seeing pretty good ethical use of coming soon. What do I mean by that? I mean that people who put data in as coming soon are being factual and truthful about things like address, because they have to be. And they're also being fairly straight shooters about dates. We do see a couple of outliers. We do still have a couple of agents that do a little marketing in a way that is certainly exposes it to some members of the public, but doesn't get it to all the agents, and we have to do follow-up with them. But what I'm happy to report is, in almost every case where we've reached out to an agent and said, hi, it's been more than 3 days, you're clearly marketing this to the public, here's a spreadsheet or here's a picture that shows you doing it, can you please make sure that gets in? They've entered it, and they've done so very, very quickly. I've had some really great conversations with a few agents where they sort of didn't understand the nuance, and I really feel like we're, for the most part, all on board and doing the right things now for our clients. And that makes me very happy.
So you're saying no $5,000 fines have been issued?
I'm saying that we've done our best to avoid issuing fines. Our goal was never to charge someone a big whack of money. Our goal was always to try to get agents to make the data available to everyone. Let's get the highest value for our clients. Let's make sure everyone who could have a shot at it gets a shot at it.
So what you're saying is no one's been fined $5,000 by surprise. They knew it was coming.
If they got a fine, they definitely knew it was coming. And if they viewed that as a cost of doing business, I mean, that's a decision.
All right, fair enough. Great to see coming soon embraced so much. I think you had mentioned what else do we have from the MLS this morning?
Well, I wanted to show you just how expansive the data outside of the city is. So a moment ago, I was showing you how much increased inventory we had in the city. But the other part that's really important for us in the city is that we border on another county. San Mateo County is, effectively part of our territory. That's just true. So before, if you would go to the map view, you'd see the city. I'm just going to zoom out a little here. Let me get a new share window going for you. Stop that. Let's go back and get this. Okay. And maybe this is already showing. So I'm just going to zoom out a little and show you the city. This is always what our data looked like. A lot of pins in the city. But if you scrolled south, you'd eventually hit that San Mateo line and the listings would just vanish. It would be blank. Now it's not anymore. Now I can stretch as far as I want down the peninsula. The listing density just stays right there because we have all of that data. And of course, consequently, like I was saying about our active inventory, we're also providing listings that our agents are taking that are down in maybe San Jose. Those listings are showing up now right in front of the MLS listings agents. They don't have to come to our MLS to find it. They don't have to look on Quattro or their equivalent. They just see everything right in their own map explorer. This is truly a join the MLS that makes the best sense for you and your business, but see everything reality. And it's really exciting.
So as long as we're talking about San Mateo,
Sure.
let me ask you a question you probably haven't had in a year or so. Tuesday tours and the MLSs. I think there was a specific question about San Mateo's tour being visible in the MLS. And then also, will they ever coordinate, sync up, kind of anything to say there?
Yes, sure. So if you go onto the listings tab and you scroll down for tours, instead of it just asking you if you want to put your listing on tour or would you like to run a report, now you get this map that says, hey, what are you interested in touring? So if you want to go and check out the tours for MLS listings, when you click on it, you're presented with a search interface that lets you search all of their tour data. We now import all of their tour data. We also do import their tour data that's for the city. So the unfortunate byproduct of our custom report is that the data we get from them is not currently compatible with our report. So just a reminder that if you're running our broker tour report, which works again, you do want to consider coming in here and looking to see if there's any actives that are residential that are in the city, because you may find a non-zero amount. And I'm just going to pull San Francisco. And what do we got here? Actives. And we're looking for anything that's going to be on tour between, let's do today, and how about next week? See if any data has been entered. Preview count might not. Okay, so see, there's only one record, but that's a record you might have missed. When you go have a look at it, it's going to be important to remember that 219 Bannon Street, Unit 6E, that's going to be on tour on the 16th. So please heads up that you may want to check specifically the MLS listings one, because those agents work very closely with agents in the city. And maybe also the one from East Bay. Run the report, take a look and see if there's any extra. Those ones would be available for you to stop by and check out.
Do you have any news on if the custom tour report 2-line is going to be updated for that, or?
I do. So one of the problems with our old broker tour report is it uses a legacy reporting system. What that means is it's a piece of technology that we're trying to get rid of. And so we didn't want to redevelop a bunch of reports using it. We have converted every other report to the new reporting engine. And now we're working on the tour reports too. Those are queued up to work on once we have all the data. And when we do that conversion, the data that we get from MLS listings and from our reciprocal MLSs will be able to be integrated in that tour report. And this double layer you might have to do right now will go away. So those extra expanded broker tour reports are coming, and we're going to do them in the new improved reporting engine. It looks mostly the same in terms of like the display formatting, but underneath the hood, we have control over the data, which is something we don't currently have. It's really complicated to work on.
So the whole search thing that you just showed us a minute ago is cool and totally confusing. So just bottom line it for me. When's that going to be in the report I can just download?
The goal is to have all this finished by the end of July. The data all synchronized fully properly, the coming soon data all finished, completely synchronized, and the tour reporting all up to date in the new reporting engine.
All right, so when I come back from my realtor vacation of July and August, and I'm like hitting the road busy in September,
right,
it's all going to be in the tour sheet.
That's right. Everything's going to be there when
Beautiful.
we hit the ground running at the end of summer.
All right. Do we have some other questions for Mr. J. Pepper Martins and the MLS team, or anything else you wanted to mention?
Let's wait and see if we have a few questions. I think there's something in the Q&A. I think we may have answered this already. This is about the tours for San Mateo. Great. Well, the last thing I
coming
guess
soon. Actually, I have
Oh,
another question for you.
yeah.
Coming soon. Will we see coming soon status in partner apps like Real Scout, Theo, blah, 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 blah?
This is a great question. The East Bay MLSs, the ones that operate in Contra Costa and Alameda counties, have elected to send all of their coming soon data to some of these vendors. That is not a decision that our board of directors has been comfortable making yet. I added yet. I think after summer, one of the things we're going to seriously look at is, do we want to change our policies around this and let the vendors have it? Right now, if we were to give it to someone like Real Scout or Theo, they wouldn't be able to segment it to only show the listings that belong to specific brokerages, their own coming soon data, which is right now one of the guidance principles that I have, is only show coming soon data externally to the owners of that coming soon data. So Corcoran can see theirs, Realogy can see theirs, Compass can see theirs. You get yours, Matt, in your custom feed if you want it. And so right now that hasn't changed. So the long story short is, right now I don't have guidance to do that, but we have the power to do that if we make a decision at the board level to do so, which we may do at the end of summer.
Gotcha. All right. And what were you going to say? I think you were going to mention something.
Just that we've tried to reformat a few things around subtypes. We've taken a lot of great feedback. Everyone's been so patient about getting that information to us on what they'd prefer. So some changes that are coming. We've reorganized the subtypes to make the first column the most high value ones. And we've figured out from our experimentation with this subtype called 2 houses on lot, that actually works terrible for a single family home that may have an accessory dwelling unit or maybe an in-law suite or something. So we've implemented new functionality called ADU, and we're rolling this out over the summer too. We're also going to do some analysis on all the listings we converted to 2 houses on lot and look at, hey, which ones of these we shouldn't have converted, and we're going to work with those agents to get that data switched back to accessory dwelling unit. And I think that's going to perform a lot better, because then your home that you're trying to sell, which is a single family home, won't just appear in this other subtype that maybe seems confusing. It'll be back in single family residence where it belongs, and ADU second unit will be true.
Awesome. Sold off MLS as a status. Since that's a new status for us, was the historic conversion done for like the properties that were entered with, 0 days on market and a sales price? Or
No,
it's just going forward that we capture them?
It's just going forward, but we do have on deck a task to analyze that data, because we think that there's a case to be made for going back through all the historical data and converting it. Why haven't we? The first thing we wanted to do was resolve duplicates. So one of the things that happened as soon as we hooked up all the MLS systems together was we found 100,000 duplicate listings around the Bay Area over the last 4 or 5 years. It was a staggering number, where someone had used single sign-on to go into another system and enter a listing twice. We had to resolve and clean all that up before we can start converting the historical listing statuses of some of this data. So the data cleanup process for duplicates is ongoing. It's a lengthy process. And it's always happening in small increments. I ran, of course, that report data I showed you about active inventory to show you the graph, and I found that there were 5 duplicates in there that had evaded detection before. So now I'm going to do some follow-up on that this afternoon and try to get those sorted out. Long story short, we may still convert the historical data where it has 0 DOM or the comment says for comp purposes only. We still will look at converting that to sold off MLS, but that will be one of the last things that we can do after we're sure that the data cleanliness is really, really high.
Awesome. And we've got a question. Is it possible? I don't know if this is possible. I don't think it's possible. You can tell us if it's possible. Could someone like HomeSnap or Redfin receive a listing before it's in the MLS?
Narrowly, that's possible with the way the synchronization engines work. So what do I mean? I mean that if a listing was entered by an East Bay agent into East Bay's system, the listing address is in the city, the data feed to get that listing to, say, HomeSnap does go directly from East Bay to HomeSnap. We send data to HomeSnap too. But the synchronization timings are such that it's possible that HomeSnap may pick it up an hour before us or a few minutes before us. Now, those synchronization engines are all running in parallel. They're all running together. Sometimes one will stop briefly while a problem's being assessed, or maybe there's been a network failure of some kind. So it is possible that occasionally a listing will show up somewhere else first if that place where the listing data is being found gets a direct feed from the MLS where the data was entered. Our data backbone is meant to synchronize every 30 minutes. For the most part, we hit that as a service level. There has been a problem in the last 24 hours. Some of you might know about MLS listings, and the Rapatoni MLSs. We're working on that, which is what I'll return to after this call today.
Okay, so it is theoretically possible. If it does happen, it's for a very short window of time.
Yes.
And it happens because of the way synchronization engines are running across multiple platforms and multiple geographies.
You got it.
All right. And for those of you who think that is horrible, I'm going to old man story myself. I remember when we had to make sure our listings were in at least 24 hours in advance for Zillow to get them. There was none of this same day entry. Spoken like a cranky old man.
No, it's funny. It's funny, Matt, that you mentioned that. My post before coming to San Francisco was at Point 2 Technologies, and our service level agreements there were all 2 days. We agreed that we would try to make sure every listing got where it was supposed to go in 2 days. Now we're down to looking at it in terms of increments of hours, and that's still a huge win. Even if we sometimes miss our SLA targets a little bit, we're still at the point where we're talking about it being hourly, and we're talking about it being fractions of an hour, and that's a great win for the industry.
Awesome. Our final segment today is past presidents, and risk management. Anything you want to say before we move along here, J. Pepper Martins?
No, just that I guess, let me just say one thing, which is the project's length. It took us a long time doing a lot of theory to get to the point where we could put it in your hands. Now it's in your hands. We're finding out great feedback from everyone about actual changes, actual things that don't work, where it theoretically looked like a good idea. And of course, once it's really out in the wild, we find out, hey, that was a miss. The 2 houses on lot is a great example. So we always expected that there would be some period of time where we had to iron out those wrinkles. We projected it to be about 6 months. Believe it or not, we're only just over halfway through that period. So thank you all for your patience and your energy and time getting us the information. It is all making it to us one way or another, and we are integrating those changes into our live product. The agent community of San Francisco has been phenomenal, and I'm just glad that we're getting towards that bright future that even you and I were talking about this back in 2015, and we're finally going to get there, and that's super exciting.
7 years, best 7 years of my life.
Well, we got here together. I think that's the important part.
We did. So thank you, Mr. J. Pepper Martins, for joining us and giving us the update on what's happening and what has happened with our MLS. And we will hear more from you in the coming months, I'm sure, when we read our emails and check our videos. And now we are going to wrap this up. I'm hoping Mr. Dan Hershkowitz is available.
Hello.
Dan.
Hi.
Are you like, is that Lake Tahoe in the background I see?
In Twain Harte on the way to Yosemite.
Very nice. Very, very nice. I didn't even know we had a Twain Harte, California.
Yes, we do.
All right.
Anyhow, I want to say before we begin, thank you to Patrick Gardner. What a great job you did putting this together. And Matt, the more that I listen to you, the more that I think somebody should impeach me and reinstate you as president. You are absolutely fantastic at this. So thank you.
Thank you. And no impeaching you, Dan. We love you. So we're going to kick this off with a past, present, and future conversation on the market and risk management. As a past president, I've been asked to speak about markets past, and this is what I have to say. If you're on this call, if your business still exists, you have survived something that, except for the Spanish flu influenza of like 1918 or 20, whenever it was, has never happened to our industry. Like, we've been through recessions, we've been through depressions, we've never been through this. So you did it, we adapted, you're still here. Everything is coming back to the new normal. Congratulations. Dan, you are Mr. President. What are things looking like right now?
Well, you know, what's interesting is the same question is, I'm the present, right? Past and future and present Christmas. And so here's the present Christmas, right? And what's funny about this is, honestly, I don't think anything's changed. So here's what I mean. Things are the same today as they were 15 years ago or 5 years ago. And here's what I mean. Here's who succeeds. Someone with a strong CRM network, right? You have a strong network, you succeed. A systematic approach in marketing and procedures, you have a leg up. A reliable and consistent team members, support persons that are willing to, without passion, execute your plan and procedures, right? A stable of qualified referrals, stagers, attorneys, tax persons, et cetera, right? Meanwhile, you're still juggling the latest disruptions. They're just a little different than the disruptions last time, right? You're still juggling the newest laws and the newest forms. There's just more of them and they're more annoying, right? But it really is the same thing, right? And at the same time, what are you doing? You're fending off other brokers and their efforts to seduce you, right? And to try to get you to come to them before the train leaves the station for fear that you're going to be on the outside, right? Sound familiar? It's still happening, right? And in the meantime, what are you doing? You're meeting twice a week with your life coach, right? To talk about a work balance and how you're never going to have it and how you need to work towards that work balance, right? It is all the same, right? And the question is of who succeeds. I mean, every time a new agent came to me as a manager and said, I'm interested in being a part of this team, this brokerage, I want you to explain to me what I need to succeed. Or every time I tried to evaluate what they needed to succeed, I said, there's only two things. Are you capable of putting your face in front of as many faces of real buyers and real sellers as possible? And there's a lot of different ways to get there, you know, marketing, your sphere of influence, CRM, et cetera, et cetera. And then two, are you the type of person that talks them into or convinces them viscerally that you're the right person that can take them over the goal line to make this thing happen? None of that has changed. All of this noise is noise. It's unfortunately noise that we need to deal with and sift through, but I don't see how any of those fundamentals have changed. And so if I was asked about Christmas present, that's what I would say. Christmas present looks a lot like Christmas past.
And if I was to ask you about Christmas future, I think that we could perhaps infer that Christmas future is going to look a whole lot like Christmas present and Christmas past, right? Just focus on the fundamentals.
With one little caveat, and then I think this is an important one. I think finally, in terms of our social responsibility, we've recognized how stupid we have been in our prejudice, right? Not only wrong and immoral in discounting the worth of so many people and keeping them on the outside, but from even a selfish perspective, the stupidity of not opening up the world to this greater portion of the world. Now, we're really making real efforts to invite these people who have been marginalized into our profession and to invite these people as our clients and making a real effort to broaden opportunities. And I think that that rising tide will hopefully elevate all boats. I know I've just destroyed that line, whatever it is, but I think you get the point.
Yes, and I want to put a pitch out for that. The NAR, National Association of Realtors At Home with Diversity program. I've actually completed it. I went to the Magic Mini Town, and I highly recommend it. So anyone there, NAR, I think, Dan, you've got some crazy Wi-Fi things happening there. I hope it's not my Wi-Fi. So if you have not yet done the NAR's At Home with Diversity, it is well worth your time, and local past president and real estate legend Alan Okamoto was actually involved in helping create that program. All right, Dan, I love the way that you've downgraded your bandwidth to leave this next section to me. But we have been asked to address our final segment here, which is about risk management and all of the horrible things that can go wrong. Many of you know two incredibly adept local risk management attorneys. What's Vicky's last name? Vicky Nadorf, thank you. Awful mouthful. And Bill Jansen. And neither one of them, unfortunately, can join us today. So I and Dan are going to be your fill-ins for this segment about should you or should you not be working out of area. And I offered to kick this off with the Matt Fuller thoughts on should you do it or should you not? So here's the criteria we use at Jackson Fuller Real Estate, because if I look at our attendee list of 30 attendees on this call today, you are all smart, capable individuals. And guess what? Just like me, you've always been told to manage and honor the relationship with your clients, right? Keep in touch with them, tell them what's happening at the new laws, send them things, call them, give them something of value, the relationship, have a CRM, right? The relationship. So we nurture the relationship, and then they call us and they're like, hey, I want to buy a house in Sacramento, or I've got a friend in San Diego, or whatever it might be, but it's no longer San Francisco and the Bay Area. And our managers' advice is always refer that out, refer that out, refer that out. And as agents, you know, our inclination is like, that's our relationship. Like, I don't want to give that relationship away. So acknowledging the truth of that, the first question we ask ourselves, I ask myself, is if I screw this deal up that's out of area, can my client afford it? Not can I afford it, but can my client afford it? So for example, if you've got a good friend who has been saving up their money for years to buy their first home, and they've finally got their down payment together, and maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 3%, they're doing FHA, whatever it might be, but they are like scraping to get their foot into the real estate ladder of wealth, which is what we always encourage people to do. So there's one kind of client. Here's another kind. The client who is so rich that he has bought more, or she has bought more homes in a year than you have bought shoes. Because there are those clients out there who are very high net worth. And if the purchase of a property doesn't work out, it's a bummer, but it's not the end of the world. So this person that you're going to be working with, like if you screw up big time, can they afford it? Or have you ruined their life and the friendship or whatever it is? So number one, if you're going to go out of area and you do it wrong, what is the impact going to be on your client's future life? Number two, are you being honest with your client? Like, are you willing to tell them, hey, Jane, I would love to represent you in the sale of a Sacramento house, and I've never sold a house in Sacramento, so some things could come up along the way. As long as you're being honest, like, and your client makes that decision, you've helped your client to make an informed decision. But are you being honest with your client if you're inferring by not mentioning that you're going to be able to give them the same level of service and knowledge out of area as you would in San Francisco? Because that's the assumption your clients are making, that you're going to be as awesome outside of San Francisco as you are in San Francisco. And if you're not sure that you're going to be that awesome, you should let them know and make that choice with them. Don't make that choice for them. Number three, are you willing to do this deal for free? Our MLS is not just a collection of listings, although obviously listings are what it's all about. It's a set of business rules. A set of business rules that say, if I bring you a client and we go into contract, I'm getting paid. And as soon as we go out of area, that is no longer necessarily guaranteed unless we're both members of the same MLS where I find this listing. So we're not in the practice of starting with commission agreements and a conversation about getting paid to even bring a person an offer. I'll give you an example. I'll tell a story on myself. New construction. Here in San Francisco, new construction offices are generally great about cooperating with us and paying us a full commission. How would you feel if you took a day to take your clients up to new construction out of an area? They love the new construction. They go into contract, and you find out you're getting paid $1,000 referral fee. That's it. So if you're going to go out of area, make sure you know how you're going to get paid before you plan on going on out of area, because there are times it happens, people don't get paid.
Hey, Matt, let me interrupt you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're in the clouds now, Dan.
Yes, I know. I'm back. I needed to zoom back in. Something went wrong. So I've zoomed all the way back to the bridge. Let me just add one thing though, and I love this discussion. So as a risk manager, so I'm a former attorney, former real estate broker, practiced for years, managed, and I'm a director of risk management. So as a
Vice president of no.
Yeah, well, I like to think of it as there are many, many ways for this thing to actually work out. Let's find one. That is my attitude. But I do remind us this one basic issue, which is our ignorance is not a good thing. And there is no substitute for ignorance, right? Trying real hard is not enough. So if you went to a surgeon who is a hand specialist and you said, I'd like you to do some brain surgery, there's no consent form that you can sign that says, okay, I love you, you're my good friend, we're going to do some brain surgery today, even though I'm not qualified. And the same is true for us. If I'm not qualified to sell commercial real estate, I'm not qualified to sell commercial real estate. I may have a license that allows me to do it, but I also need the skill and the expertise. So I have some choices. One is learn, right? Become knowledgeable, not easy, right? But it's theoretically possible, particularly if your friend says in 6 months, I want to buy commercial real estate. Or two, partner with somebody who actually knows what they're doing. So I have sold a lot of real estate, and I've sold a bunch of real estate outside of San Francisco. Never did I sell outside of San Francisco without partnering with somebody else who was actually a local expert, because it is way too easy not to know what's going on. And I promise you, I see actual examples every single day of someone who just didn't know. They didn't know about the sewer lateral requirement. They didn't know about the Oakland tree ordinance. They didn't know about the wildfire zone requirements. They didn't know, they didn't know, they didn't know. And when did they find out? When somebody was presented with a $20,000 bill, and guess who's going to pay for it?
You.
Yes.
The vice president of no. And I think it's the perfect point is as soon as you go out of area, you don't know what you don't know. And that's what gets us all in trouble. And to your point, like partnering with someone is a phenomenal way to mitigate that risk. But we also all belong to referral networks, many of us, right? CRS, GRI, whatever it may be. So why do we belong to referral networks if we're not using them?
And I think sometimes it's really important to remember that you actually are providing service to your client by making the referral. And so I'm going to hold up my hand for a moment. You may be able to see that ring. See how that ring is sitting on top of that finger and it doesn't go down. And here's this joke that I have. It works on this one, on this hand, but not on this hand. And the reason it doesn't work on this hand is because some stupid dog named Biscuit bit me a couple of years ago. And while I was at the doctor talking about literally blood pressure and heart disease and that kind of stuff, I said to the doc, oh, look at my hand. This dog bit me and this swelling, it's been 6 months and it won't go down. And what's the story on this? Is this thing ever going to go down? And the doctor said to me, I have no idea. I do hearts. What the hell do I know about hands? She said, but my best friend is actually a hand specialist. Let me give you her number. I'll let her know you're calling. She usually has a 6-month wait, but if you use my name, she can get you in soon. Was that not fantastic service? Right? Would this not be a doctor that I would recommend? And so the analogy is when your seller says to you, I want you to do my listing for my lease. You know what the answer is? You hold up the hand, you say, I'm going to provide this fantastic service and send you to somebody who is a specialist in lease listings. I want to make sure this thing goes well with you. I'd be happy to give you the number directly and meet with the two of you if you would like that. Perhaps we can even schedule lunch. But this isn't my expertise. I think that's excellent service. Don't be afraid to make these referrals for fear that these people are going to run away and forget about you.
If someone didn't write down that script, you can watch it again and again on YouTube, because that is the perfect way to position making a referral. I think that's a great example. We're coming up on 1 p.m. and I know everyone has things to sell. So to wrap this up, we will end with a horror story from Vicky Nadorf. All of these things apply because let's say, and we're not even going to use a theoretical example, let's just use the example. There's a beautiful house along the coast of California and your friend is like, hey, I want this house. It's a beautiful house. You know, real estate, you can get me this beautiful coastal home in California. It's been on the market for a year. No one else. It's had multiple price reductions. You're like, let's do this. You get them the house. They're in contract. You ask for some seller reports. They were exempt from the TDS. So you're a hardworking agent. You get them some other documentation. You don't know which documentation you really should be getting them though, because you've never sold anything along the coast. And there are some very particular things about coastal development. So anyway, your client loves you. You got them this report, you close the deal, client moves in and all of the neighbors are like, wow, we're really surprised that you bought that house because it's an erosion zone and it's all going to be falling into the Pacific Ocean. Did you give your client the best service if you help them get a house that's literally falling into the Pacific Ocean? No, you did not. And this is not a made up example. This actually happened. There is a friendship that was ruined for this. And there is someone who lost a whole lot of money and their dream house and their dream view because their best friend sold them a coastal house that they didn't know anything about when it comes to the Coastal Commission and redeveloping, because even if they could fix the erosion problem, in this case, the Coastal Commission said, no, you can't. There's nothing you can do. Would you want that to happen, Dan?
Well, I just think you got that story so wrong. I mean, you said that they lost a whole bunch of money. No, they didn't. They shifted that burden to the real estate agent and the brokerage and their insurance company who paid $1 million. They're fine.
They're fine financially, but the friendship was ruined. The friendship was ruined.
No doubt. Yeah. So
that agent's life was ruined for 2 years of depositions.
Yeah, and you see the point there, but I would like to say that on a daily basis, it may not be the Coastal Commission or it may not be the local sewage treatment plant. It may just be your ability to run comps, right? So the time that an appraiser comes into the city and they ask you, what is No Valley? Or they say, I'm going to meet you in No Valley. Is that not a red flag that says, I do not want this appraiser? This appraiser has no idea what's going on. Well, that's you when you go to San Mateo, right? You're running comps for properties that are across the tracks and you don't know the difference, right? And you help your client make a $200,000 mistake because you don't know the difference, that everything across the track is a whole different thing and it's not in No Valley, it's in Noe Valley. Thank you very much. So that, I think, is what you need to remember.
Awesome. I couldn't say it better than that. To wrap things up, Mr. Patrick Gardner, would you like to turn your camera back on? So we can all say thank you so much for organizing today and setting this up. There were a ton of resources that have been presented throughout. Those will be made available. We're in the process of collecting links. This has also been recorded, so you can go back and see Dan's perfect language to use with your clients or whatever else it might be. And Patrick, what else am I forgetting to mention?
I think you're forgetting to mention to thank yourself for being an awesome host. So
thank you.
MC with the most, thank you for tracking all of this for us. And thank you, audience, for sticking in there the whole 2 hours. We'll see you guys on Monday. We'll see everybody on Monday for our police deputy chief interview and understanding how we can prevent crime from happening to real estate agents. So again, Monday, 9:30. Thank you all for tuning in today. And we look forward to the next event that we see you on.
Thank you,
Monday,
Patrick.
9:30.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Matt.
you all.
Bye.
Thanks, Jen. Bye-bye.